Dr. Boyd.
Hey.
It's a pleasure.
How are you, sir?
Hey, Dr. Boyd, how you doing, man?
Oh, man.
Bashir, good to
see
see
you. Certainly.
Today we're talking about Louis Armstrong. And not just the Louis Armstrong that people know, but also Louis Armstrong, the marijuana advocate, user, aficionado, enjoyer.
Weed head. It's kind of hard to imagine, but people looked at weed in the 30s as though it were methamphetamine or heroin, and it was associated a lot with black jazz musicians, so there was a negative stigma, but also it was thought of as something that might make you crazy. So yeah, it was a very different thing than the way people think about it now. I mean, also Cab Calloway, you know, back in the 30s, Cab Calloway sang the song, you know, Here Come the Reefer Man. Most people didn't know what he was talking about because reefer was slang, and if you wasn't hip, you didn't know what he meant because weed wasn't that pervasive. Back in Pop's era, it was difficult. He had this brand he liked called New Orleans Golden Leaf. And Pops talked about how if you could get your hands on some of that New Orleans Golden Leaf, your life might be all right, you know? I mean, you know, Pops is from New Orleans, and New Orleans is one of the places in the country that weed sort of came into the United States because New Orleans was such a port town. And you had, you know, cats from the Caribbean, of course, connection with a place like Haiti. And, you know, so a lot of weed is coming through Jamaicans, et cetera. I mean, New Orleans is the spot. If you were a musician, for instance, and you were on the road, you wanted to link up with Pops because Pops always had that golden leaf.
That good. Smoking Mad J's every day. He also, in some of our research, it showed that he actually would do weed and laxatives.
Swiss Chris.
Is that what that's called?
Swiss Chris. He was a big supporter and endorser of Swiss Chris.
One thing about Louis Armstrong I find fascinating is that he's actually busted by LA vice cops in Culver City one night.
You mean the LAPD arrested a black guy?
I'm glad you're sitting down.
Like, really?
But yeah, apparently,
hold on to your socks.
Say it ain't so.
They were fans of Pops, and apparently he comes out to the parking lot during a gig and starts smoking a J. And these cops come over and they're like, we really don't want to have to do this to you, but we got to take you downtown. So Louis says he got in the squad car with them and rode downtown with them, got down to the station. They're like, hey, guys, we brought in Louis Armstrong. Do you think that this was the first bust of a celebrity for drug possession?
It was certainly not the first. It might have been the first that made the news. It might have been the first that somebody talked about publicly, but, you know, the relationship between the LAPD and the entertainment industry, the black community, Hollywood, that's all an integral part of the whole thing, you know?
It's worth noting that he never played his hometown between 1955 and 1965 because that city didn't allow for integrated bands.
That's right.
He had a public awakening in the sense that he began to speak out.
Pops was real critical of what was going on, you know, down Little Rock, Arkansas, and he confronted Eisenhower over the situation, you know,
tell us
schools,
about that,
you know, Brown versus Board of Education. But of course, people were very slow and deliberate in implementing that. Got to have National Guard escorting people to school.
Little girls to school,
and you know, violence. I mean, you can watch the footage, documentaries, and Pops was very agitated about this. The fact that Eisenhower was dragging his feet. So it was kind of unusual for a guy who many people thought of as a Tom to be critical of the president and speaking out in behalf of these black people who were trying to simply just go to school and get an education. So it indicated Pops was a lot more complex than maybe people thought he was. And you take that coupled with the weed, get a, you know, fuller perspective of who he was. You know,
it's interesting because Pops had his issues with Eisenhower. Jackie Robinson also wrote a strongly worded letter to Eisenhower. It seems like there were a lot of guys from that generation who were very disappointed at the racial progress.
Who didn't like Ike.
Of Ike. Specifically those
like
years.
Ike.
Exactly,
Ike, you know, in other words, that's what they were saying.
I haven't seen that one on a button, but you know what? I think it's safe. We had one of our talented animators draw up a cartoon. It depicts a night in Louis Armstrong's life when he smoked a lot and went to go see The Wizard of Oz.
That's right.
So pretty much any night of his life, The Wizard of Oz was available to be viewed.
It's like a Tuesday.
He went down to the Orpheum Theater on Broadway here in Los Angeles, and let's see what that night looked like.
Last night I went to see The Wizard of Oz. I bought 2 popcorns and 8 Hershey bars. A monkey chased Dorothy. I laughed uncontrollably. I'll have to see that picture again. I went home after the flick, and guess what I did? I took 2 big puffs and popped some laxatives. I really like Swiss Chris. That'll be the stuff that I miss when your old pal Pops walks through those pearly gates. Well, last night I was off to see The Wizard again. But I took not 1, not 2, but 20 friends. Because of last night's buzz, I forgot how funny it was. Since Amelia, I'll love you till the end. Since Amelia, I'll love you till the end.
We want to thank you for coming through,
Man,
Dr.
it was a
Boyd.
pleasure. And I think hopefully we'll have you again real soon.
All right.
Real soon.
Thank you.
You're watching Black History on the History Channel.
Has anyone ever told you you look just like Charlie Chaplin?
Oh my God, can you do the waddle? Do the waddle.
Do it, do it.